Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football here on 1029 The Game and the Broad Street South Network. So excited to be with you. I mean, what another crazy week around the National Football League. You had some more upsets. You had some teams, I think, breaking out. You had some teams saying I'm a contender, and you had some teams saying they're a pretender. And I think some of them may be getting ready for coaches looking around at the end of the season, and then possibly, maybe Caleb Williams may be in their future as a number one overall pick coming next season. So lots to get to. Excited for everybody to be here. I have my partner in crime, Brian Neff, with me. Glad that he's with me this evening. And, we're going to kick it right off and jump into the games itself. And then we're going to talk about where we are in the overall season at the quarter pole. I'm not giving out awards, but maybe we'll start looking at who's done well to this point. Obviously, you don't want to uh, say too much in terms of long season aspirations and making overall predictions off these first 4 weeks, but I think some teams are on a good path and some teams have some work to do. Obviously, last season we saw, the Jacksonville Jaguars started 2-6 before they won the AFC South, and then they ended up winning some games in the playoffs and making some noise. So you can see how that happens around the National Football League. So you take it week to week, game to game, half to half, and Ryan, I'll bring you in. It's interesting. I always start locally where I am, and the first game I'll talk about is the Philadelphia Eagles. They're stacking W's. They're 4-0, but when I looked at the line on this game immediately, I'm like, okay, the Eagles are almost a 9-point favorite at home, and Washington last year ended their unbeaten season in Week 10. And I know what kind of difficulty they have with this unit. Jack Del Rio, in particular, the Washington Commanders defensive coordinator, he seems to have a plan for the Eagles. And it was a tough, tight game. Eagles win 34-31. But there were situations where I know some of my friends and family that are Eagle fans, they were probably biting their nails and worrying if this Eagles team is going to win this game. What do you think?
Well, I mean, it was a well played game, to be quite honest with you. No turnovers. Um, both defenses struggled. I thought Washington exposed that secondary a little bit for Philly. Um, and subsequently, Washington's I mean, they came to play. So I thought this game would be a blowout. Uh, there is no easy game in the NFL this year unless you're playing the Bears or unless you're playing the Panthers. So fantastic game. Very equal when you look at the stats. I just thought that in the end, Philadelphia made a little bit more plays than what Washington did. I thought in overtime that Washington was going to win the football game, but I mean, I thought it would end in a tie there for a little while. But again, Philadelphia doing what it needs to do to win. They're 4-0, maybe a little bit shaky 4-0. Washington has nothing to hang their heads about. They played fantastically. They're 2-2. They're right in the thick of the NFC East. Again, Sam Howell doesn't turn the ball over. You have a great chance to win with them. We saw what happened last week when he threw 4 interceptions, and I didn't think Hurts had a bad game, but Philadelphia Lloyd wasn't able. You can see what Washington's game plan was. We are not going to let the Eagles run the ball down our throats the way they
Yes.
did the last 2 weeks, and I thought that's what kept them in the football game.
Yeah, and that Del Rio's leaning on that defensive line built with it. Allen and Payne and Young. I mean, they have some defensive run stuffers, and you're right. They made sure that all right, Hertz is going to have to beat us from the pocket. Hertz, I thought, did a nice job in terms of his overall play. He was 25 or 37, 319 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He had 34 yards rushing, and he seemed more comfortable this week. He was not getting harassed as much, and just was moving the football down the field. In particular, AJ Brown. AJ Brown, they seem to be on the same page after a little tiff a couple weeks ago. He had 9 catches, 175 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's really making this thing go. And Swift, he got his chances: 14 rushes, 56 yards, and a touchdown. So he was in the mix as well. And but when I look at this Eagle team, they definitely, as you said, they have some areas of improvement. So they're 4-0. And as I always say, you want to stack those W's. Nobody cares about style points. And come week 12 or so, when you start making that playoff push, it's better to get the win than not. And yes, it may have been a struggle in overtime to get that win, and they went on another Jake Elliott field goal, but a win's a win. The Eagles, I think in particular, they got to work on that secondary. Job, the guy that they have playing out there, he's overmatched. And McLaurin had 8 catches for 86 yards, and you could see that he's being targeted, and teams are going to continue doing that. So as the Eagles face better quarterbacks, obviously they're going to be like, oh, okay, they have somebody in that secondary we can go after. And Bradbury's been playing the slot. I think he's probably better on the outside, and their linebackers are more thumpers than cover guys. So good quality win. But the Eagles 4-12 on third downs. That kind of scares you a little bit, and they need to do a better job there. And then, but conversely, in terms of that overall, 415 total yards. So they were moving the football down the field, and good quality win for them. And I think their fans got to say, all right, we got to win. You got to move on, and everything's not going to be easy in the National Football League, as you said. Every team is going to get up from everyone, and the Eagles are defending NFC champs, and teams are going to be ready for them. So the Eagles coming up have a big game with they got to fly all the way out to Los Angeles to face a Rams team that's coming along, and then they play at the Jets, Miami, and then they play Washington again. They play Dallas finally. That's a game everybody wants to see, and then they're bye. And then in Washington, as you said, the NFC East is so competitive as it was last year. They had 3 teams make the playoffs. I think they can again have 3 teams come out of there. We'll see how the Giants do in a few minutes when they kick that off. We'll talk about the game in a minute. And Washington, they're getting a JV. They're playing Chicago next week, and we'll get to them in a second. And let's keep moving on, and we have a lot of games to cover. I know our producer is saying let's try to hit all these. This was a little bit of a surprise to me, and given going in, everybody was talking about this team. This was a team that's been dominant. They put up 70 points a couple weeks ago, but the Miami Dolphins went into Buffalo, and Buffalo showed them who is still the king of the AFC East, and it was a butt whooping. It ended up 48-20, but it could have been worse. And Josh Allen, for all his detractors out there, this young man was ready to play, and he seems to have the Dolphins number. He's been able to beat them several times over the years, and he was 21 of 25, 320 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. So he's in complete control. And then Sean McDermott did a great job in terms of designing his defense to shut down that Miami attack that was just destroying the NFL. I don't even really think I heard Tariq Hill's name called out that much. So a great team effort by the Bills. And, I think the Bills are definitely going to come up. Ryan, what do you think on this one?
Again, Josh Allen doesn't turn the ball over. You take care of it. You let the defense do their thing, and they're going to win a lot of football games. I said going into last week, the Bills had the defense to shut the Dolphins down. They did for the most part. Again, no turnovers, I don't think, on the Bills side from what I saw. So Buffalo taking care of the football. Tua had a decent game. I mean, he was 25 of 35, 282, a touchdown, but he had to pick. They ran the ball effectively, but again, it was like sort of pick your poison with the Bills. Do we try and shut down Hill or Waddle? Do we try and, shut down the run game? I thought for the most part the Bills were saying we are not going to let Mostert, and I hope
Yeah.
I'm saying his name, Achane or a
Yeah. Devin.
chain.
Yeah.
They were not going to let those two get off. I know um, China had two touchdowns,
Yeah.
but again, I didn't think the Dolphins played bad. It was just I wanted to see it against the defense. Yeah, you can beat the hell out of Denver, throw up 70 points, but now you're on the road against the top-notch defense, and I'm sure that's what the Bills heard all week long,
Oh yeah.
and they were not going to let it happen in their house. And
They.
I've said it
Mhm.
before, and I'll say it again. As long as Josh Allen takes care of the football, this team is dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. And they are. And I almost maybe wrote them off a little too early, especially after how bad they played in week one. But it just shows you that a team can build and keep coming back, particularly in defense. Greg Russo did a really nice job. He had 2 sacks in this game. Ed Oliver's dominant in the middle of that defense. They're going to be getting Vaughn Miller back, and that's going to be a big key for them. And they were able to force a fumble and Tua had that interception that you talked about to Micah Hyde. So good win for the Bills, and a big thing for the Bills though. They get back Hamlin, which was very nice to see him play after his cardiac situation last year, and that was good for him to get back on the field. But they did lose Tre'Davious White, their corner that one time was a Pro Bowler. He had an Achilles injury; he's going to be out the rest of the season. So they're going to have to find replacements for him. But we know the NFL; it's next man up, and Sean McDermott seems to be determined, him and Brandon being their general manager, to kind of get this team over the hump. We'll see if they're able to do it. Uh, you know, Quality win for them, and much like the Eagles, their receiver that was complaining a couple weeks ago is very happy. Stephon Diggs had 6 catches, 120 yards, 3 touchdowns. They got the ball to him, and it was his yards after catch that was incredible. He was getting the ball and then running it down the field and making big plays. So, when he's happy, this team's going to be happy and they're going to be dangerous. So, big game for Buffalo next week. They go to Jacksonville. That's going to be really fun to watch. It could be a playoff type preview. Jacksonville's coming to Buffalo, and that's going to be interesting to see. Miami, we'll see if they're able to rebound. They're going to host the Giants, who are going to come in there on a short week. So that's going to be a fun one to see as well. So good quality win for the Bills, and we'll see if this is able to spur them forward. Just a reminder, everybody, you're listening to Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game and the Broad Street South Network. The next game I wanted to touch on, this was an interesting one, Ryan. It was, everybody counted out this team, and they took a good step forward, and they're actually going to play the Eagles next week. It's the Rams. Now, the Rams won on a Puka Nachua walk-off touchdown, in overtime in Indianapolis. Good quality win for them, 29-23. And this Rams team, a lot of people wrote them off, said they're rebuilding and 19 rookies and all this dead cap space. But this team is improving, and this was a good quality win for them. And Indianapolis also showed me something in this game. Richardson's come along as a good young quarterback. Obviously, he wants to get his passing percentage up, but he's a strong young man in terms of just you could see his athleticism. And the interesting thing is, I was just talking to somebody. It looks like Jonathan Taylor is going to start practicing again for the Colts. I don't know if he's going to end up on the team or not, but he's going to start practicing, and maybe they can trade him or they'll even get him out there. So that could be something that Indianapolis can help improve upon. So good quality win for the Rams. You're seeing Stafford start looking effective again. And Puka Nacho, a guy I'm sure we'll talk about at our quarter point awards in a few minutes. He's a young man that's really coming along. So, I'm going to keep my eye on his team, and it should be a fun game when the Eagles go out to Los Angeles this week.
Yeah, I mean Stafford played well, 27 to 40, 310 yards a pick. He had the pick, but he had a touchdown. Kyron Williams with 25 carries, which you don't see that anymore from running backs. 25 carries, a buck three. He had the 2 touchdowns, and then, like you said, Puka Nacua, 9 catches, 163 yards. The guy's playing out of his mind right now. Who is going to replace Cooper Kupp until he comes back? And they have their answer. Now, if Cooper Kupp ever comes back, that's a deadly combination. So, Rams playing well. They, obviously had the lead. Indianapolis fought their way back. I didn't, again, another overtime game. But if the Rams can do this effectively, they ran the ball 36 times and they passed it 40. That's tremendous balance to keep the defense, off kilter. So, if the Eagles better watch out. I thought they would blow out the Commanders, and it almost bit them. They didn't come really bring their A game. They better bring their A game next week because the Rams, anytime you have Aaron Donald on that defense, he can cause disruptions. And as far as the Colts go, they're young. They'll learn. They fought. They ran the ball 31 times for 133 yards, or 31 for 133. Richardson, pedestrian-like. He had the 2 touchdowns, but he was 11 to 25 for only 200 yards. So they sort of need to, other than Michael Pittman, what's the other receiver that's going to step up? Because if you only have like one solid number one receiver, what do you think defenses are going to do? They're going to double him most of the day, force everybody else to beat him. And when I look at the receiving, Pittman had 1 catch for 15 yards. So nobody else had more than 3 catches, which was Drew Ogletree. 3 catches, 48 yards. He had the touchdown. But you get that. That's where I think Indianapolis is lacking. Other than Pittman, there's no other receiver on this team that's going to scare you.
Yeah, and they're a good young team, as you're saying. Steichen's coming there, and Chris Ballard, their general manager, they assembled a good young core nucleus there. I like Franklin defensively in terms of tackling. Machine had 12 tackles in a game for Colts, and they're just going to get better. Obviously, that in that division, you think that Jacksonville's probably going to be the cream of the crop, and it's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. I think those teams are going to be kind of jumbled in there, though, in that AFC South. I know you and I were texting offline. We were talking about parity around the National Football League, and you see that where there's 12 teams right now that are at 2-2. So, a lot of things can change. A lot can go on. I know I hear from fans all the time emailing me, say, "Oh, our season's over" and all that stuff. But I always caution people, that 2007 Giants team is one of the ones, a prime example. They come in the season 0-2, 1-2 at a certain point, and they were able to get hot, and then they beat the team that everybody thought, the dynasty of the Patriots, and then they were undefeated. Could they have an undefeated season? And they beat them in the Super Bowl. So it can happen. Just have your team get in a dance and keep rolling along. I'll tell you a team that really surprised me. Every game has 2 sides, but this was a total shocker to me. The Pittsburgh Steelers go to Texas, and the Houston Texans just beat them up. The Steelers did not look good in this one. You thought, okay, the Steelers kind of turned things around after that Monday night win and this and that. But Pickett hurts his knee. Before that, he was 15 to 23, 114 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. He was frazzled in the pocket. They were all over him. And, it was a good win for the Texans. D'Amico Ryans, a lot of people were not talking about that hire, but when he came in there, you could see he has a plan for this young Texans team. They have a boatload of draft picks next season, and they could be very dangerous. C.J. Stroud, 16 of 30, 306 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions again, and he's showing that he can lead his team, and he's definitely on the same page with Nico Collins. He had 7 catches for 168 yards and 2 touchdowns. So surprisingly, the Houston Texans are tied for the lead in the AFC South with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Well, everybody in that division is 2-2. If you take a look at, and Pickett's going to have a hard time just because, and I said this by the Steelers about the Steelers. Other than George Pickens, again, like with the Colts, other than George Pickens in that receiving core, maybe Freiermuth, there's not a receiver on this roster that scares the hell out of me. And Pickens is even a borderline number one. Um, so, the Texans, tremendous balance. They threw 31 times, they rushed 38 times. And it was clear that they wanted that kind of balance against the Steelers defense. And again, if offensively you cannot move the football and you're constantly putting your defense on the field, your defense throughout the game is going to wear down. Now, I hope the injury to Pickett's not real serious, but is Trubisky the answer?
Oh no,
No, no. So it's not
Mason
like,
Rudolph.
yeah. I mean, it's not like the Steelers front office could have said in the offseason, what's our plan B other than Kenny Pickett? And now it's come to fruition. And I know the head coach. I know Tomlin, aka Omar Epps. I know that he is going to have a rough go of it this year because I don't see it. I don't see where they're going to have a winning record this year. They're just offensively, they're just going to struggle the entire year. And that defense at some point will be beat up. But I mean, my God, they got taken behind the woodshed.
Yeah, he did. He did. And he's our new general manager there. Kevin Colbert retired, and I agree with you that this roster is just, they have an excellence there, and it's not even close. They have there's so much. I know they have injuries like Cam Hayward and some guys that are missing, but you can see this team is defensively built. T.J. Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick, yeah, they're their playmakers, but offensively they just don't have much. Najee Harris is not getting it done for him. He had 14 rushes for 71 yards, but he's just not the player they thought when they drafted him in the first round. And you do feel bad for Pickett. He's behind a line that's just not allowing him to feel comfortable in the pocket. The Steelers only converted 43% of their third downs this one, and they only had 225 yards of total offense. And everybody's talking about the one guy, and you hate to pile on him, but Matt Canada, their offensive coordinator, he's just, I don't know if he's NFL ready. He came from the college ranks, and they, Mike Tomlin is a guy who always, he is very loyal, and the organization is loyal. We talked about before how they've only had 3 coaches in like the last 50 years, but they have a mess here. And I tend to agree with you. This may be Mike Tomlin's first losing season, and they'll just have to pick up the pieces. Obviously, he's not one of the coaches we're going to talk about in a few minutes on the hot seat, but this team is not getting it done, and they have some work to do. The Steelers have the big grudge match this week against the Baltimore Ravens, and then hopefully the next week during their bye, they can kind of get back to where they need to be. The next team I want to talk about, Ryan, is your favorite team. I want to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. That was a tough watch last night. They jump out to the 17-0 lead in the first quarter. You're like, all right, this is a laugher. The Jets are the Jets, and they're just going to kill them. And we all know the Jets are in trouble. Robert Saleh's in trouble, and Zach Wilson, his quarterback, struggling. But they changed the narrative, and they changed it real quick. It went from 17 on the first quarter, then it's 20-12 at the half, and then you look up, you're like, oh man, it's 2020, leaving the third quarter, and in the fourth quarter, the Chiefs hung on. They hung on and won this game. Pat Mahomes, you would have thought he was the quarterback that was on the hot seat. He was kind of terrible in my opinion. He was 18 of 30. 203 yards. He had 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. He was forcing the ball in bad situations. And then I already heard from some of my Jets fans that the Chiefs got bailed out on that Sauce Gardner call near the end of that game, which extended that drive. So, the Chiefs get the W, but much like the Eagles, their record's better than they might be at this point in the season.
Yeah, I mean, I went back and took a look at the play on Gardner. It was holding. So, Jets fans can complain all they want, but it definitely was a hold. I mean, I took it like 8 to 10 times I looked at it. So, but, Mahomes, you have to stop trying to be like Brett Favre all the time.
Yeah.
He thinks he can make every play, and when he does, he gets himself in trouble. And this is the Pat Mahomes that I do not like. It was pedestrian. 18 to 30, 203 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. You're not going to do that against solid football teams to win the game. Now, what I was pleased for with the Chiefs is that they ran the ball 35 times for 204 yards.
Yes.
Pacheco, 20 carries, 115 yards, and a touchdown. That running game now seems to be coming along. But again, Lloyd, I said this in the offseason. Other than Kelsey, the other receivers just don't scare you.
Yeah.
He had 6 catches for 60 yards. Pacheco and Rashee Rice, they each had 3 catches. Patrick did spread the ball around a little bit, but Justin Watson, no catches. Sky Moore, no catches. Kadarius Toney, 2 catches for 22 yards. So, again, I'm glad the running game has come around. They might have to lean on that more heavily going forward. But again, when your best receiver is your tight end, and let's be honest, he's sort of a tight end wide receiver. He's not really a true tight end as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But other than Kelsey, the other receivers just don't scare you. So if you know that they're not going to scare you and they're going to double team Kelsey, who else is going to step up? Nobody from that receiving corps has impressed me enough to say, okay, here's the guy. They maybe thought it was Sky Moore. Rashee Rice has shown flashes, but again, they're 3-1. A W is a W.
Yeah.
But it's a very shaky 3-1.
It is. And Andy Reid gets his 250th regular season win. A great job to him with that. And, they have some work to do there. Him and Brett Veach, their general manager, they got to look at this roster and figure something out. But it'll probably be an off season because you're probably at this point, a lot of people are saying, well, Lloyd, can a team trade and this, that? You're probably stuck with whoever you had at this point because most teams do not like making trades and helping other teams. Maybe you can raid somebody's practice squad and grab somebody there. But the thing is, when I look at the Chiefs offensively, as you're saying, they're going to struggle because whether it's Tony, whether it's Moore, they can't replace Tariq Hill. You know what I mean? And I don't know if he trusts him. It's at that point where he's like, I see him back in the pocket, and he's like, can this guy get open? And there were a couple times, Ryan, where he was holding the ball, and I'm like, throw it, and then he took off and ran, and a couple times on his big runs, there was a penalty for holding on his offensive line, and those guys, I think some of them may be better in terms of their maulers. They're better run blockers than they are pass blockers, and you just wonder where this Chiefs team is going to go. Yes, they stacked the W, and Andy Reid will say on to next week and all that, but that Jets team, we know they're a mess. And they were there to be had. And to Zach Wilson's credit, he did kind of turn it around 28 of 39, 245 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. And, good call out on him. And he and Wilson seem to be getting on the same page, but not for big yards. Wilson, 9 catches, 60 yards. The guy that really impressed me in this game, as you said, was Isaiah Pacheco. He was running that football downhill, 20 rushes, 115 yards. And 1 touchdown. And they had some long drives and where they were moving the chains. But then later on, they just weren't doing anything. And they let them in the game. And it's a win. They keep moving, and then they go from there. The interesting thing for the Chiefs is they go to Minnesota. Minnesota is a team that also has an explosiveness. And on defense, the Chiefs are kind of vulnerable there. Yes, they have Bolton. And they have Chris Jones, but, in their back end, they are kind of vulnerable to the pass. So we'll see how that goes for them.
And I'll say this about the Jets real quick. They only ran the ball 16 times. Shame on the Jets coaching staff, the offensive game plan. You can't expect Zach Wilson to go out there and throw it 39, 40 times and expect to win with that plethora of running backs that the Jets have. I know the offensive line is suspect. But for God's sakes, you can't expect to run the ball 16 times for a little over 100 yards and expect to win the football game. It's just not going to happen. And Zach Wilson, people get off Zach Wilson's back already. For the love of God, I mean, just let the kid alone. And look, he's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Aaron Rodgers. He is what he is, and he played well yesterday. He really did.
Yeah.
But you're not doing him any favors by only running the ball 16 times. I don't know. I have
Yeah,
no idea.
and I think people are going to always pick on him because he's the quarterback in New York, and he's not Aaron Rodgers, and everybody wanted that storyline this year, and he's at that first round pedigree on him, and he's just going to have to keep battling through. Robert Salah as well, and maybe they can win a game this week. They got Denver, so we'll talk. Maybe we'll talk about. We'll see. We'll talk about Denver in a minute. But the team I want to talk about, and you're listening to Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 102.9 The Game and the Broad Street South Network. I'm here with Ryan Neff, and we're going through all the games. Talking about the ones that excited us. I got to tell you, this one excited some of my family members. These Philly Dallas fans are back. They weren't crowing last week when Dallas was getting their doors blown off by the Arizona Cardinals, but this week they're talking about the Cowboys and they're beating their chests as the Cowboys thump the New England Patriots 38-3. And I usually wait to get my lackey out until the Monday Night Football game, but I think I'm just going to give my lackey this week to Bill Belichick and his New England Patriots. They are not a good team. I mean, we talk about general managers that have done a disservice to their coach. Well, guess what? Belichick only has to look in the mirror because he has done it to himself. Bill Belichick, the GM, has not helped the coach because there is nothing in the cupboard. We talked about a lack of weapons on some of these other teams. There's just really no explosiveness, anything on this Patriots offense, and they're not scaring anyone. And conversely, Dallas, they're front runners when they get that big lead and everybody's happy. They just pour gasoline on fire. And that's what Dak Prescott did, 28 of 34, 261 yards, one touchdown, no interceptions. He had that nice fade pattern, CeeDee Lamb for the touchdown, and good quality win for the Cowboys. But obviously, the road is going to get tougher for Dallas. They're at San Francisco next week. We're really going to find out who they are. And then they're at the Chargers, another tough team. They have their bye. Then they have the Rams, and then they're at Philadelphia, the game that everybody wants to see. So good quality win for the Cowboys. They're 8 of 15 on third down, and they showed you that they could bounce back after a very bad loss.
Yeah, I mean, I said this last week. Dallas goes on the road. They're supposed to kick butt. They lose. Then they come back home against, let's face it, the Patriots aren't very good. And then they put together this kind of performance, which this is the kind of performance that they should have had last week on the road. Defense showed up. Offense showed up. They played like a contender yesterday. So, maybe that for this week, all the noise will calm down until they lose again. But again, Dak doesn't turn the ball over. You play good defense. This team is going to win a lot of football games. And conversely, with the Patriots, you're right. Bill Belichick, you're starting to see the beginning of the end of the Belichick era in New England. I think Robert Kraft is just going to be like, okay, we had a great 20-plus year run. It's time for some fresh ideas. So, Mac Jones getting hurt, Bailey Zapp came in. They just don't. They don't know what their identity is. They don't know what they want to do. And again, when you can't put together offensively drives a sustained length, and you continue to put your defense out on the field, your defense is just going to be overmatched. They ran the ball 23 times for 53 yards, and they only threw it 30 times. That's not a formula for success. And again, this roster as currently constructed, what other than maybe Hunter Henry, their tight end, Devontae Parker might be past his prime. Juju Smith-Schuster he's been non-existent the last couple years.
Yeah.
And you just don't. Kendrick Bourne had a good week the first week, but nobody on that receiving core is going to scare you. And again, the quarterback position, Mac Jones has shown flashes over the last 2 3 years, but it's nothing sustainable. It's too inconsistent. And now that he has the injury, and you're throwing Bailey Zapp out there, you're probably going to have to expect more of the same.
Yeah, and Belichick, this 35-point loss was the largest margin of defeat in Belichick's 29-year coaching career. So it just shows you that maybe he's lost his fastball. He's just not who he used to be. He's Joe Namath playing for the Rams.
Yeah.
He does not look right at this point. And yes, Robert Kraft, obviously, all that goodwill over all those years, you think that would help him. But this is a team that's kind of rudderless. Mac Jones, a guy who he's not the guy. 29, 20, 21 before he got hurt for 150 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Most of his throws were under pressure, and that offensive line's not helping. So, going to be a long season for the Patriots, and I think it's going to get worse. Of course, you're never going to hear anybody cry for them around the National Football League because they had Brady and all those titles for so many years.
Yep.
They host the Saints. That should be a good game to see who kind of wants to take a step forward and who's going to go to the bottom probably for good. And in Dallas, we talked about earlier, they're at San Francisco. Huge game. We'll probably talk about that as we look to next week. As we move around, I think it's that quarter pole time around the National Football League, Ryan, and it's interesting. So here on Lloyd Man's Inside Football on 102.9 The Game and the Broad Street South Network, we want to look at where the NFL is at the quarter point of this season. So I'm not going to give awards, but you want to start talking about, okay, there's certain things we always talk about every season, and we'll look at them at the quarter point of this season. Ryan, I think the biggest thing is these coaches on a hot seat. All right. So you got Matt Eberflus, who's had like 3-4 wins in his whole time he's been there with the Chicago Bears. They're a total mess. Yes, Justin Fields played pretty well yesterday, but they're another team that just they can't get it right. They signed Edmonds and all these guys $90 million in free agency, and none of them are playing well for them, and they're 0-4. Carolina doesn't feel as bad at 0-4. Frank Reich seems to be building something there, but Eberflus seems to be in trouble. Ryan Poles, their general manager, may be in trouble as well, and they're talking about Chase Claypool, a guy who's inactive this week, their big trade commodity, and now they're trying to get him out the door, maybe trade him, maybe release him. We'll just have to wait and see on that. So, while my coach is on a hot seat, Eberflus, number one. I have to throw McDaniels in there for the Raiders, another underachieving group, and obviously Ziegler, their general manager, has not helped them either. There's just not a lot on that team either, other than Max Crosby. And then I'll throw one last name out there, and you can just let me know if you agree with some of these or have some additions. Brandon Staley. I know they won the game for the Chargers recently, but this team can't finish games, and I think he's going to be on the hot seat because he was a defensive coach, and it's always his defense that kind of lets him down.
Yeah, I mean, I to be quite honest with you, I put on Twitter yesterday that I thought Eberflus was going to get fired today. You're kicking Denver's butt. You're up 28-7, and then you just had like a major collapse. I don't know if he'll get fired during the week. They might still want to see what he can do. But, if you up 28-7, you collapse. I thought that was his demise. We'll have to see. I agree with you on Josh McDaniels. I just don't think he's a head coach. He's a great offensive mind. He's just not a head coach. Some of the others you mentioned, I would say maybe on the fence. The other one that I was thinking of was, and I'm drawing a blank, the head coach from Minnesota.
Kevin O'Connell.
Yeah, I mean, 1-3. They don't look good. I've said this the last couple of years. I think the Kirk Cousins experiment has failed. I'm surprised they haven't moved on from it yet. I mean, I think he's on the hot seat. And then the other one is Robert Salah. Um,
Yes.
so we'll see what happens with the Jets going forward. I'm sure management's gonna, with the Aaron Rodgers injury, they're probably trying to give him a little bit more time. But I mean, they're 1-3, last in the division with New England. I mean, I don't know who's worse. I mean, you would have to say the Jets because they lost to the Patriots. So, we'll see what happens going forward. But it's the NFL coaching carousel has already begun, and all
Yeah.
the hot seats gonna, all it's just gonna get ramped up more and more with each loss.
Yeah, and typically every year you probably about 5 to 6 coaches that change around the National Football League, and everybody's looking for the new hotshot Sean McVay. That always is a popular guy. Him and all his buddies seem to get jobs, and we'll see who's trying to move around. And I'll throw one more name out there before we jump to our next topic. You know, Ron Rivera, and he's on the hot seat for another week because he's got the guy on his staff who I think they're trying to replace him with. Eric Bieniemy has this team kind of believing in him, and you can see the players, and I talked to somebody down there in the locker room that they're already responding to him. And then you look at Rivera. Uh, Quite frankly, against the Eagles, I thought they should have went for two and the win. Why not, instead of going for overtime? Why not put it out there? Hey, we're still here to win. And you knew once they didn't go for that 2-point conversion, they were going to somehow lose that game. But
Yeah.
definitely Rivera's on the hot seat too.
Yeah, I mean they are 2-2, so I think with that performance against the Eagles, I think he bought himself a little bit more time.
Yeah.
So I don't think really maybe other than Chicago or New York, maybe Minnesota. I think what a lot of management is going to do is where are we at the end of October?
Yes.
And if you're really pathetic at the end of October, then I think you'll start to see like major changes. I think that's when the influx of changes that are going to be made. But I don't really think anything will be done. Nothing ever surprises me when it comes to the NFL. But I think get through October, we'll see where we are, then we make decisions.
Yeah. And the trade line's right around November 1st, so we'll keep an eye on that. Let's talk about, I shouldn't probably word it this way, but the MVP. Who do you at the leader point in this at the quarter poll? I would have to say I'm going to just throw a couple names out there and why. Christian McCaffrey is looking at, you know, they've won 14 straight games with the Niners, and I think they've won 10 straight since they traded for McCaffrey. So it just shows you the dominance of him. I think he'd be a thousand guy this season, joining Roger Craig and Marshall Faulk, and he's just a dominant team player. Tua, I know they lost this week in bad fashion, but Tua was putting up historic numbers through the first couple weeks of the season. He had already known for 1,000 yards in like 2 games, and we talked about the 70-point win that they put up, and so definitely Tua is one of my MVP candidates. And I'll throw out one more, and then I'll let you chime in. This is a total surprising one, and I can't believe I'm going to say the name. Baker Mayfield. How about him? The Bucks. The Bucks are 3-1, and he is looking efficient. I'm sure. Watch this week; he'll throw 5 interceptions, including 2 pick sixes. But I got to tell you, right now he's. I'm not saying he's in a conversation, but he's playing like at least the MVP of the Bucks at this point in the season.
I agree with most of those except for that last pick. How about 2 others? How about Justin Jefferson and Pachua Nakua? Puka. I'm butchering the name, but I mean, Jefferson has 543 receiving yards through 4 games, and Nakua has 501. So if those two continue to rack up the catches, rack up the yards, I know traditionally it either goes to running back or quarterback. I get it. And I'll even throw another one in there just because he's putting up great numbers with no Austin Eckler. He's lost Mike Williams. I know Keenan Allen's doing some damage, but Justin Herbert. I know they're 2-2,
Yeah,
but now he's got the injured, left hand. I guess it's fractured. But the kid just continues to perform, and I almost feel bad for him because
yeah,
if he actually had a great roster around him, if he had the receiving core of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and he had those running backs, oh my God, I would like to see what he'd be able to do.
yeah, and Telesco's their general manager, and he's built a pretty good team, and but it's defensively heavy. You know what I mean? Like the biggest defense, like Keenan Allen is a very good receiver, but other than him and Eckler can't seem to stay healthy. The Mike Williams as well. They always just have somebody banged up, and Herbert needs some help out there. I do like Slater, their offensive left tackle. He's a dominant kid coming out of Northwestern. But they do need a little bit more around him, and I think his coaching doesn't help either. I thought Anthony Lynn and his stat, Pep Hamilton had him moving in the right direction, and they moved on from them. Brandon Staley, we talked about him being on hot seat. I just, why would you pair a young quarterback that you drafted in the first round with a defensive minded head coach? And we, you know, I always talk about it. I'm a defensive guy. I like teams that run the football and play tough defense, but the NFL is a passing league first.
Yeah.
So if you're going to invest to bring him in from Oregon, and why not, um, pair him with some McVay type, that's going to let him spread the football around the field. So, yeah, Herbert is definitely an interesting name to throw out there as well. They play Vegas, then they have their bye, so they're going to try to get healthy and then go from there. Um, let's jump over to we talked about the coaches that were on a hot seat. Let's talk about the coaches that are doing a nice job at this point in the season. And there's a couple I'll throw out there. Todd Bowles. A lot of people left him for dead, and they said, "Oh, he's just kind of living off of what Bruce Arians left down there," and he had that tough loss against the Eagles. But his team is playing very hard for him, and they're surprising 3-1. They lead the NFC South, so I definitely want to tip my cap to him. Kyle Shanahan, we talked about the dominance of the Niners right now. I don't do power rankings anymore, but they would be my number one team in the National Football League. And you definitely have to put Kyle Shanahan up there. And then I'll throw one more surprise in there. D'Amico Ryans, we talked about it earlier in our game recap. That Texans team is a good young developing squad, and he's doing a nice job with them. And him and Stroud may have something there. We'll wait and see how this year turns out for him.
The only other one that I maybe would throw in there would be I'm just looking at stats and stuff like that. So you mentioned D'Amico Ryans. I agree with. Uh, Maybe the only one I would throw in there is John Harbaugh. I mean, they're 3-1. I know they lost last week, but you know, Baltimore traditionally ground and pound, play
Mm-hmm.
solid defense. But they're beat up in the
They
running back.
lost. They don't have seven starters, and he just keeps winning games.
Yeah, I mean, Lamar Jackson again. He's going to do his thing. Mark Andrews is going to do his thing, but other than Mark Andrews, receiving core wise, there's really nobody that jumps off the page at you. So he just continues to get the most out of
Yeah,
every team every year, no matter what the circumstance is. And you know, I personally thought that Cincinnati was going to win this division. We all know what's happened to them, and Baltimore to be 3-1 after 4 games. I'm a little surprised at that.
yeah. And I forgot one more, and he's probably somewhere biting a kneecap. Dan Campbell.
Yeah,
Dan Campbell done a great job with that Lions team. They have high expectations for them. They're 3-1. They lead the NFC North, and I picked them to win that division. And they're showing people why. They're doing a great job. Montgomery ran the ball down the other team's throat this week, and Goff. We talked about him before. He gets no respect around the league. He's Rodney Dangerfield, but the guy just keeps putting up numbers. And Amon St. Brown, wow. He's playing at a Pro Bowl level at the receiver position. So the Lions, you got to give them a shout out as well. Um, let's talk about disappointments. and surprises here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game and Broad Street South Network. I'm here with Ryan Neff. Um, Disappointments, just overall, this could be a player, this could be a team. I think probably my biggest disappointment, and it's got to be the Bengals.
Yeah.
Zach Taylor. We should probably talk about him on. It's crazy. They were just in the Super Bowl and everything. I don't know if he's on a hot seat or anything, but they've just been an overall disappointment. I think the biggest disappointment to me in terms of the Bengals is they probably should have shut down Joe Burrow with that cap in preseason or leading into the season, and then he could have got right. Because right now he just cannot push off on that thing. And I driving the football down the field. You see Jamar Chase, he's saying, I was open every play and they didn't get the ball to me. And the offensive line's always in flux. They brought Layout Collins in, he gets hurt, then they get rid of him. So, the Bengals are in disarray. They're 1-3. And you got to wonder, is it time to push the panic button on the Bengals?
Yeah, I mean, big time disappointment. There's much more going on than just Joe Burrow being hurt, and I don't know if it's a carryover from the playoff loss last year when they thought that they maybe should have been in the Super Bowl, but just something. You've got Higgins, you've got Chase, you've got Mixon coming out of the backfield. They have way too much talent on both sides of the ball to be 1-3, but that's why they play the games. There's just you can see the internal stuff starting to come to fruition in Cincinnati. There's a lot of internal bickering going on right now. They just don't seem like themselves, and again, I just think that with the Bengals, they're just, again, I don't know if it's the hangover from last year. I know Burrow's hurt, but still, all in all, there's just too much talent there. A couple other disappointments for me would be the Vikings. Again,
Let's go.
There's just too much talent on both sides of the ball for them to be sitting in 1-3. And again, Kirk Cousins, when he doesn't turn the ball over, they seem to be in it. When he turns the ball over, he's just too inconsistent with his play. And I guess like the other biggest disappointment for me would be Denver. Sean Payton coming in, trying to change the culture, finger pointing going on. You get your ass kicked again yesterday, but then you
Sure
come back
did.
and you win the foot. You come back and win the football game. So again,
They needed that win too. By the way,
yeah,
and you could tell it was more relief than happiness when they won that game. And everybody's blaming Russ, but Russell Wilson has been playing pretty well. He had a pretty good game yesterday, and Peyton probably needs to back off the bravado and just kind of concentrate on his own team. He's in a very tough division, as we know. With the Chiefs and the Chargers there, and even the Raiders will put up a fight against them. So, Denver, that's definitely a good call out in terms of disappointment. Um, let's jump over to surprises. I think probably my biggest surprise is when I look at the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. They were supposed to be, everybody kept saying, "Oh, it's a rematch." They're going to be rematch in the Super Bowl. Both these teams are winning, but as we said, they're winning ugly, and you just thought they'd be able to flick the switch and be like, okay, we're a Super Bowl contender. But right now, they're surprised to me how well they're not playing.
my two surprise teams are Houston, sitting at 2-2, especially with the way they've looked like the last 2-3 weeks. I think D'Amico has them playing well. They're taking on the identity of the coach, and it's showing on the field. They're starting to build a lot of confidence. I thought Houston would be terrible this year. Now it's 2-2. It's still early in the season, but you can see C.J. Stroud gaining confidence. Offensive
Right.
and defense in the trenches, they're getting confidence. And my other biggest surprise would be the Bucks. 3-1. Baker Mayfield. They had the stinker against Philadelphia. You're going to have stinkers throughout the course of the NFL season. But again, like with Baker, when Baker takes care of the football, they're in football games. When he starts to turn the ball over and starts to do dumb stuff, that's when he gets himself in trouble. So those would be my two biggest surprises for me.
Yeah, and when you talk about the Bucks, I'll chime in on that. You know, Mike Evans is in a contract year, so the Glazer family there, they kind of said prove it, and he's definitely stepped up. He's having a big time season, and I wouldn't say it's a surprise, but he's in a contract year, and that's going to be interesting to see. Do they decide to franchise him or let him walk? Because I know a lot of teams that would like to have a Mike Evans on their squad. So
Oh yeah.
those are some good surprises. Um, the final midseason thing we'll look at. Uh, this is always fun. Rookies of the year candidates, and as we said, some of these young guys are doing a great job stepping forward. And it's not like the old days, Ryan, where you draft a guy and you kind of stash him and you play the veteran. Some of these young guys are stepping right in and making an immediate impact. And I'll just throw a couple names out there, and you can chime in as well. C.J. Stroud, he's not turning the football over. And everybody said, oh, coming out of Ohio State, he may be a little overmatched. Bryce Young's the pick. Well, CJ Stroud has stepped in as a leader, gotten on the same page with guys like Nico Collins, and this team is dangerous. They're a fun watch. We talked about D'Amico Ryans earlier. So CJ Stroud's one. Puka Nachua, obviously, he got his first touchdown in walk-off fashion, but he's putting up historic numbers for a rookie receiver, and we'll see if he's able to continue that. And uh, I'm hearing Cooper Kupp is going to start practicing real soon, and that's going to be a dangerous combination. That's going to be a good problem to have, having those two guys in that offense for Matthew Stafford, and they're going to find ways to use them. Williams as well, that young running back is playing very well for them. And I'll just throw one more defensive rookie of the year candidate. All my Philadelphia brethren are talking about this guy, and I definitely have to agree with them. Jalen Carter is just dominant in the middle of the defensive line. The Eagles just got a total steal when it came to him in terms of the draft. Yes, he had that legal cloud hanging over him, but that all cleared up, and they were glad to grab him. And you put him in that defensive line next to Fletcher Cox, and they are just not letting anybody run the football on them. So Jalen Carter, right now, I have to call him out.
I agree with all those. The only other two that I would throw in there would be Achane from Miami if he
Yeah.
continues to perform like he is. And then the other one would be Laporta, the tight end.
Oh yes, from tight
Yeah.
end you. I will. How's I will always do it, man. They always get these big time tight ends.
Yep. All these rookies are contributing early. Not really hearing too much about Bijan. I don't know what Atlanta's trying to do with him. I thought maybe would go off a little bit more, but again with Atlanta, Lloyd Desmond Ritter when
Yeah.
he takes we talk about it. I hate to beat a dead horse. When you take care of the football, they're in football games. When he hasn't taken care of the football, just like they did against the Jags,
Yeah.
and just a side note. I know you said that the Bills go to the Jags. Jacksonville had to stay in London because they have back-to-back London games. So
That's right. That's
Bills,
right. Yeah.
yeah,
That's their 10th game over there, and you start wondering if Shad Khan or Oder. I was talking with somebody, and they're like, "Do you think Shad Khan would ever think of basing that team in London?" And I said, "You know what? Yeah, they quite possibly could. This is their 10th time playing over there. They always seem to win, and they pack the stadium. And I've been to a game in Jacksonville at the old Gator Bowl. That's where they play, and the place needs some renovation. I'll just put it that way. Shad Khan wants those luxury suites. He wants the prime premium seating, and yeah, I could see that happening, but it would be a logistics nightmare, in my opinion, trying to get teams over there for at least 8 games, and how do you work out the buys behind it? But definitely, I think the NFL is interested. They had the London game this week, London game next week, and then there's one in Germany later.
yeah. It wouldn't surprise me. I think it would be idiotic for him to
Yeah,
do it. I'd rather see him in, pulling maybe the team out of Jacksonville and go into like a San Antonio or different cities that would be. Why not take him to San Diego? You know what I mean?
yeah.
Go,
Montgomery, Birmingham, Alabama. They've always had that, Legion Field there and all that. They had that success in the past with
yep.
USFL and some other teams. So yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely agree.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. So you're listening to Lloyd Mance's Insider Football on 1029 The Game and Broad Street South Network. We're going to jump over and start in the last 15 minutes or so. We're going to jump over and take a look ahead to the upcoming week of games and where we stand with some of the teams as we go past this quarter pole mark. Obviously, it's not true quarter pole mark. You remember back in the day, it was always 16 games. They jumped to that 17 game schedule the last couple of years. Um, Actually, the first game we got to talk about it is tonight, Ryan. You know that this is an interesting one. You have the New York Giants. Can they kind of not save their season, but definitely turn things around because I think it could get ugly real quick. Um, they're playing Seattle. So Seattle has Geno Smith. They're 2-1, and they're trying to keep moving things forward. But the Giants, it's all about Daniel Jones and Saquon's beat up. So this is going to be an interesting game to me. But in the end, I think that um, I got to go with the safe pick. Even though it's a road team, I think that Seattle's going to win this one.
Yeah, I mean, Giants, I don't think they know what they want to do. I don't think Barkley's playing again tonight. So when Jones takes care of the football again, they're in a football game. When he starts doing stupid stuff, but I just think Seattle, they have too much on both the offensive side and the defense side to lose this game. Do I think they'll blow them out? No. Do I think it'll be a close game? Yes. But I'm like you. I think Seattle wins the football game.
Yeah. All right. Let's jump to week 5. Thursday night, we've been talking. It's funny. We've been talking about this team all the time. They're so bad. It's the Chicago Bears with Matt Eberflus trying to save his job and Justin Fields trying to show that he is a first round quarterback against the Washington Commanders, the team who, they're going to have that moral victory against the Eagles. They lost in overtime, and everybody say, "Oh, we almost won," but we always hand grenades and horseshoes. That's what I always tell my sons when they say almost. So this is going to be interesting because I think that Fields and Johnson, their young running back, they're going to be able to maybe do something here. But I think it'll end up with a defensive battle type situation. And the Washington Commanders, led by Jack Del Rio and that strong defensive line, it'll probably get after Justin Fields and he'll probably make some mistakes. I know he played well this week. But I think Thursday night I would go with the Commanders.
Yeah, I agree. Washington, I think they're too strong defensively. Chicago will do some things, but I just think there's just too much Washington in the end. I can see this game being, Washington like 24, Chicago 17.
Yeah. All right. And then let's start talking about our Sunday games. Um, I'm just going to throw out ones that interest me the most. Jacksonville. Yeah, let's talk about this one. Jacksonville at Buffalo Bills. As we said, this game is in London. Um, Jaguars are staying over there, but you have a red hot Bills team coming in there after 3 straight victories. They've seemed to right at the ship, and this is going to be a battle of young quarterbacks. Which one wants to step forward the most, and 2 MVP candidates. Uh, when I look at this one, obviously losing Tre'Davious White is going to be a tough loss for the Buffalo Bills, but I think Sean McDermott has found a good recipe in terms of his defense and them getting pressure on their quarterback. Jacksonville's lines a little beat up, and I think that the Bills are going to be able to get some pressure on Lawrence, and he'll make a few mistakes in this one. So expect a close game, but I think the Bills will pull it out in the end, probably a field goal type situation.
Yeah, I mean, Jacksonville obviously acclimated to the time difference. Um, you know, Buffalo, the defense travels. So, Jacksonville, a little bit disappointing to me at 2-2. But these are the types of games you have to win if you want to be considered a contender. I just don't see it. I think it'll be a close game, but I think Buffalo will probably wind up winning in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and another game that's kind of jumping off to me is you got the New York Giants, who are probably on a short. They're going to be on a short week. They got to go to the Miami Dolphins, who just lost a tough game in a game where Buffalo kind of beat the doors off them. It's going to be interesting to see if the Giants can kind of hold this down, even though their defense is a little banged up and their secondary is kind of suspect. they have two very young corners, and I just don't know if that's going to be a good situation with Tariq coming in there. When I think Waddle is supposed to be healthy soon. A Cheney, we talked about him at the running back position, and Moser. The Dolphins can put up some points quick. I say take the Dolphins this one, and they're probably going to lay at probably about um, close to 10 points. I say take the Dolphins and give the points and look for the over in this one as well.
Yeah, I think the Giants. Hopefully, Barkley will be back. That would be a huge boost for them. But Miami in the heat. Giants have to travel down there on a short week against Seattle. Miami. This will be a get right game for them. They'll have to make the adjustments, but Waddle, Hill, Mostert, a Cheney. There's just too much Miami. They'll probably. I see a blowout coming.
Yeah, I can, and you're going to see Brian Dable. He seems to always makes those faces on the sideline, so he's going to probably be upset. This is his antacid special, so hopefully, I know I have a lot of big blue fans out there, but I don't think I'm going to be wrong on this one, so we'll see. One of the other games definitely got to talk about this one. This is a black and blue special. It's the Baltimore Ravens at the Pittsburgh Steelers. These two teams and their fan bases do not like each other. Um, but when I look at this one, Ryan, it's very interesting in terms of is Kenny Pickett going to be able to play with that knee injury, and if you do have to throw out the backups, whether it's Trubisky or Mason Rudolph, they're in trouble. And Baltimore, yes, they're beat up. As we said, they had 7 starters out, guys like Ronnie Stanley, and they lost J.K. Dobbins, their running back. But, Lamar's finding ways to play in games, and he's putting up big numbers this season. He's kind of getting back to his old MVP ways, running the football. It's going to be interesting to see Lamar versus T.J. Watt in that defense. But I think in the end, the Ravens won this one. It'll probably be another close game, and we'll see. It'll probably be on a kick by their all-world kicker.
I'm going the opposite way.
Uh-oh. Nice.
I just think Pittsburgh doesn't want to get in too deep of a hole. I think they're going to come out guns a-blazing. I think Pittsburgh know what they have to do defensively. Baltimore caught a break last night with Deshaun Watson not playing. I think Pittsburgh is going to ground and pound it to death in this particular game, try and keep Lamar on the sidelines. But I'm in agreement with you. It's probably going to come down to a field goal, but I got Pittsburgh winning this Sunday.
Yeah, they got Boswell's a very good kicker too, and it's going to be fun. Tucker versus Boswell. Who'd think we talk about kickers? But it is what it is. As we're coming down the stretch, this is a big one. All my Eagles, Beverin. The Eagles travel out to Los Angeles to face the Rams. They'll be in SoFi Stadium, so it'll be an indoor game. It maybe end up being a track meet. A.J. Brown trying to put up some stats. Puka Nacua trying to put up some stats. You got Williams, that young running back for the Rams. Stafford's a little banged up, so that's going to be a key injury to watch in this one. Jalen Hurts, he just keeps stacking the W's, and yes, he's going to have his naysayers that can he throw the football the way that people think that he can, and is he a frontline quarterback? Is he ascending? I definitely think he's jumping in that top 5 conversation, and he's as long as that pocket's clean and that offensive line, which is one of the best, is getting their job done. He's definitely going to be able to get the football down the field. Now, a key injury for the Eagles, Landon Dickerson, their offensive line, is a little banged up. They're not sure if he's going to be able to play in this one, so you have to watch on that one. But I think you'll see a lot of DeAndre Swift. As long as they control Aaron Donald, as you said, he's the key to this game. Him versus Kelsey, that's going to be a fun matchup to watch on the interior line. I think the Eagles, though, will find a way to pull out another W. It may be nip and tuck, but they'll find a way at the very end with Elliott to make a kick. So I'll go with the Eagles in this one.
If the Eagles cannot run the football this coming Sunday, they will lose the football game. I think they will probably get back to trying to run it 30, 35 times a game against this Rams defense, because the Rams offense is no joke right now, especially with, some of the receivers they have, and um, we'll see what happens. I think the Rams come to play. I think the Eagles are going to be in for another tussle, but again, too much on the defensive side of the football for the Eagles. I know they had a rough game yesterday. They're not going to let that happen again. I think the big boys up front for the Eagles will step up. Not going to blow them out by any means, but I think this has got like a 30-24 type game for me.
Yeah,
But I
that's
think,
beautiful.
yeah, I think the Eagles in the fourth quarter win it.
Yeah, and I think the other biggest game is on Sunday Night Football, also out in California. You got Dallas going to the Niners, and that's, to me, I think this is a game where the Niners show Dallas, all right, we're the kings of the NFC, and I think they smack them around pretty good. So, what's your
Yeah.
quick pick on that one?
Uh, you know, it's not going to surprise me if the Cowboys win because
Oh man,
these are the kinds of games that Dallas is supposed to get their butt kicked. I think Dallas comes to play. I think they'll give them a tussle. I just think San Francisco has too much on the defensive side of the ball. I see this game being like a 27-17 type game.
yeah, yeah, it's going to be fun to watch, and that's what this time of year is all about: sorting out the contenders and pretenders. A lot of football left to be played. I appreciate Ryan being on here with me this evening. Our producer Angel did a great job as well, and to all our fans, keep listening. We're on 1029 The Game, and we're on Broad Street South Network. Also follow me on Twitter at Lloyd Vance, and I believe Ryan's handle is at Ryan Neff on Twitter or X or whatever they're calling it this week. So definitely give us a follow on there. We'll also get this up on YouTube and as many outlets as possible. Definitely subscribe, take a listen to all the podcasts, etc. So you've been listening to Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game and Broad Street South Network. Talk to you next week.
Enjoy the games.